Okay, so we welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a show where we profile a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this show, we profile a guest who has a unique story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, we hope to uncover a new definition of learning as conceptualized, narrated, and imagined by the guest in our show. Today's guest, Vinod Krishnan, is a dear friend. He was born and brought up in Bahrain. Um, he pursued his undergraduate studies in Manipal and then decided to pursue a Master's of Fine Arts in animation at the Savannah College of Art and Design. Again, Vinod, we'll go ahead and let me know if I'm saying anything wrong, but I hope I've got everything right until now.
Doing good so
So,
far.
uh, and he pursued the MFA in 2015, and it went on till 2017. After he finished his course, he decided to work in the professional industry, and he's currently based in Los Angeles, and he's the animation technical director at Disney Television Animation. But since 2017, he has worked for several studios in their animation departments, including Walt Disney Animation, Sony Pictures Animation, DreamWorks Animation, and Netflix Originals Animation. And in addition to being associated with these studios, he also got the chance to be part of the art departments of some pretty prolific projects, including Annabelle Comes Home, Avengers, Endgame, Rick and Morty, Archer, among many others. And these are a few I'm listing now. He's also worked on music videos in the art department again with artists like Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, and Camila Cabello. So there's a lot to unpack there. And I know in like 2 minutes, I've given them like about 7 to 8 years of your life, Vinod. But thank you so much for making time for this. Just to get started, Vinod, I'm really excited for this because I've known you for a long time, but we just touched base. And I think right before this chat, we were talking about our time in Bahrain and common memories. But I've been following your work for quite some time now, and more as an observer, you could say a fan, but I've always been so intrigued by your ability to create these visual images. And I think it's amazing. You're incredibly skilled at what you do. But I read an interview where you spoke about your your early influences and why you decided to take up this profession in the animation industry. And let me just see if I can just start off the interview with that. And you said, more than being inspired to take up art as a career choice, I was more excited by the idea of turning my hobby of doodling in school notebooks and textbooks into a profession. So let's get started there, Vinod. I mean, what was Vinod like as a student? And apart from doodling in your sketchbooks and notebooks, what were some of the other things that you were curious about growing up?
Oh wow, that was the longest time I've been like silently listening to someone just talk about me, and I'm just like, this is so wild, but I also, like you said, right? When you mentioned all these studios and projects, there are like so many stories that go in between all this stuff. It's a 7 year long journey, and it was like I kind of phased out. And I was like, my brain took me back to all those times. But yeah, so yeah, in regards to that quote, right? So I would use the word I would carefully use the word clueless
Mm,
as something that I was for the most part of my childhood, growing up in school, because I wasn't interested in a lot of things like, academic wise.
mhm,
Um, I wasn't even interested in art, to be honest. Like, how I don't remember exactly what it was called, but in school we had this one period where we picked some extracurricular thing, like, we did something else, right? There was arts and crafts, and there was band. I remember we had band and stuff like that. So even then, yeah, I remember me and my classmates were trying to um, figure out what class to take, and then these guys are picking arts and crafts, and I was like, no, I want to pick the coolest thing. That was the band, and I walk into, I don't remember again the professor's name, but we walk in and there's people and all these, they all have instruments and they were just making this march band music, and that was incredibly cool to me. So I did that for the rest of my time. And plus cricket, like, I used to play sports. So
Yeah.
cricket was something I was super into, and I would religiously play every weekends, and I it was absurd timings. I would play from 5 a.m. to like 7 p.m., and on this in burning, scorching heat, you know. So I academically or even artistically, right? I wasn't inclined or any in any way, but
Mm.
I guess looking back, I was attracted by creativity in a way, because
Mm.
like drawing was something I did, like, as I said, doodles on my textbooks, which I got into trouble for, and a lot of times got into trouble for. And I think we all did that at one point, where we used to get these blue registers and we used to
Mm.
use them for our books. So I would like draw on the cover, and you would make some sort of, you'd write your name in a really cool way. I mean, now as an artist, if I look back, it's really bad, like the way it
Yeah.
looked. I'm just like, but back then I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess looking back, right? I mean, even drawing classes used to be a vacation thing. When we had a vacation, my mom would put me in a drawing class or like a watercoloring class or something,
Mm.
just to keep me busy, I guess. You're like, don't be idle, just go and draw something. And I didn't know that those things were something that I would want to do for the rest of my life back then. I was inclined to do things that were seen as a correct thing by the society, right?
Mm.
Engineering, or one of those things, right? Somewhere in commerce, because my mom was in banking. When she was in banking, my dad was in marketing.
Okay.
So the career path was that you would do either one of these things. Animation was, I didn't even know you could take up a career in that back
Mm.
then. So I led my entire time of schooling absolutely just aloof, I would say. I just went with the flow. I wasn't pressured to get high grades or anything like that. So
Mm.
my parents never really stressed on how it's so important to get really high grades and stuff like that. They were just like, man, figure it out. You'll figure it out. Like,
Which is,
you yeah. It was extremely, I'm extremely lucky to say that, right? Especially coming from the community that we come from,
yeah.
right? To have parents where they don't really give a crap about your grades, and they're just like, did you graduate to the next grade? Great.
Mm.
you know, and then, yeah, well, they did. So they did have some sort of push. They were like, you should try and take computer science. Like, that's what I eventually took in my 11th and 12th grade. It was
Mm.
computer science and physics, chemistry, what mathematics. Right? I don't know how the process was called, but science with computer science.
Mm.
And so I took that. I just took it because I didn't. I was like, yeah, we'll take it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And it didn't go too well because I did not. I actually, again, this is also coming back to the conversation we were having before, was about education, how
Yeah.
how important it is, right? Um, I don't believe I was educated correctly sometimes.
Mm.
I was like, if someone had put it for like all those chemistry terms or physics terms, right? There were obviously a few good teachers, but some of them, with the way they put it forward to me, it was so uninteresting. I was like, I
Mm.
don't I don't want to learn that. But the funny thing was, much later in life, animation has actually a lot. There's a lot of science involved in it. When you animate something, there's all the physics terms that you used back then, right? All the formulas you used in high school,
Yeah.
you end up using it again. Yeah, for sure. It's not as high level engineering level, but it's just like this semi basic physics, where
Mm.
you have to understand refractive index and etc. And you have to know these values. I was really bummed out when on my second year of animation, when they showed me this physics stuff. I was like, oh, not this again. I just ran away from this stuff. But eventually, because then it was showed to me in a visual way, that
Correct.
this is what physics is, and they show it to me in the animation, and they were like, if you change this value, if you change this velocity, this viscosity of the water, and all those things, when you do CGI, you can see live demonstration of how these values affect this object, and you
Yeah.
start to understand the physics and the chemistry behind it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then I thought back to the time when I was studying school, where they just showed us in a textbook, and they were like, read this stuff and try and remember it during exams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They never asked me to learn it. They never said that, learn this stuff, understand it. No, no. They were like, well, this is this you will be asked this question in the exam, so you're going to give this answer, right? So it was ridiculous, and that's when I realized that education is such an important thing
Yeah.
and that's why that's why I went on to do my masters, and hopefully and eventually I will take up the academic side of things. I want to be a professor, but I want to teach undergrad or graduate level of study. So
And yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really nice how you're so passionate about giving back to the community, Vinod, in addition to being a professional in it. But just to backtrack a little in terms of um, that Vinod growing up and figuring things out. There was sports and there was the band and there was these other things you were doing. But I remember reading somewhere, I think it was one of your other publications or interviews, you said that in the industry, if you haven't really put in your 10,000 hours, you haven't really scratched the surface, right? So,
yeah.
and when I looked at your work, I've been seeing a lot of your posts. I went through your website and saw your portfolio. I feel like the point you're at now, you've put in a considerable number of hours, but
Right.
I have this intuitive feeling that a lot of those hours were put in before you even started your MFA in
Oh,
Savannah. When you
100%.
so
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit about that phase out of high school going into the MFA, that 3 to 4 year period. What
Right.
were some of the learning experiences that you engaged in the formal or in the informal system to develop your curiosity or skill level in this particular space? It could be an online course or a
Right.
mentor or just seeing other films and seeing how they
Right.
go about doing it. So,
It's a really good question because I don't talk about that enough.
yeah.
About the way that motivation period, right? So yeah, let's go back to 11th grade, or I think it was about 12th, beginning of 12th grade, right? Um, I was hanging out with my cousin sister that she's about 4 years older to me,
Mhm.
and so again I was as something that I did, it's almost unconsciously, was doodle. I just would draw like random cartoons around the place, and I would find TV cabinets and I would draw on the TV cabinet, and I would like I would graffiti it out and stuff like that. But it
Yeah.
was something that I did without really thinking into it. I was just like, oh, this is what I like doing, and it's fun. I was so into like buying different pens. So any country I went to, I used to hit up like stationery stores. I mean, it was like a fancy little thing that I had in my head. I was like, cool pens, these ink pens and these gel pens and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't really take it into consideration, and then so my cousin, she was just hanging out with me, and she was like, hey, you're pretty decent at drawing. Do you want to do animation? And I was like, what is that?
Mm.
And she was like, you watch movies, cartoons, and stuff. She's like, yeah, it's to make that. It's to make movies, and she was like, but you, if you, because she was in Vancouver Film School, which is she was doing visual effects, which is very different. I mean, I wouldn't say very different. It's a different tangent in animation. There's
Got it.
there's visual effects, there's animation.
Mm.
So she's doing visual effects, and she was like, you should do animation because that's a little bit more on the drawing side of things. And I was really fascinated. I was like, what do you mean I can draw like for the rest of my life? I can be doing this.
Mm.
And she's like, yeah. And then obviously, I didn't ask too many questions then, but it was in my head, it was so strong. And I was like, the thought that, oh my god, there's something else I could do, that I don't have to do this science again, this chemistry and physics, and because at that point I didn't really like it, right? I didn't
Mm.
want to do that stuff. It was so boring to me, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to do anything but this.
Yeah.
And when this came my way, and then when I found out it was a legitimate degree you can get in, like where you can make your Indian parents happy saying that I have a degree, college,
Yeah.
it's not just like a diploma or anything. It's crazy. And I looked into universities and programs, and again, internet, it wasn't what it is today back then, right?
Yeah.
The information on the internet was very limited in a
Mhm.
way. I mean, yeah, back then you would like, oh, this is like encyclopedia and stuff like that. But in reference to today, that was a very limited sort of information. And you Google it. When I Googled animation school, not one American school popped up on my
Okay.
search. You know what I
Interesting.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, so because I was in Bahrain, and when I Googled it, I got general Asian universities.
Got
I
it.
didn't get a SCAD, never showed up. I didn't
Yeah.
even know what SCAD was, right?
Yeah.
Um, So I chose the university that looked best on paper to me, right?
Mm.
And because again, I didn't know what I was getting into at this point. I mean, I knew. I was like, okay, I watched all these movies again. I watched the spiel of Disney movies, right? Jungle Book and Lion King and etc. So
Yeah.
then I watched it from a different point of view, and I was like, oh, this is what I could do. But I mean, little did I know that that was a early '90s, '80s things, because then you draw on paper, but then now it's all digital. But again, I just knew, all like, cool, animation. We draw a lot. Great.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think too much into it. I was just like, hey, college, we're going to college. I can grow my hair.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think into what I was getting into, right?
Sure.
Because again, when I had gone to go to the, there was this entrance exam and stuff like that to get into the university. The entrance exam was to draw.
Oh, okay. Which was good for you, right?
Yeah, my mind was blown. I go there and they give me these blank sheets of paper, and they have like these topics saying that, I think back there was a global warming, and or ice caps melting, something like that. Something that you have to illustrate it. You have to show what is in your head, right?
Mm.
That was wild, and I think I remember distinctively asking the professor, because he was. I mean, when I looked at him, and I found out that he was my art professor. He had long hair. He had hair up till here, and he got this goatee, and I was like,
Nice.
"You're my professor." And thing is, I was like, "What do I draw?" He was like, "Anything you want."
Okay.
I'm like, "But I don't know what to draw to in order to like get into the university." And he's like, "No, just draw. Like, whatever you want to draw, just draw it, and then we'll think about the whole admission stuff later. But right now, you just draw." And
Mm.
I was like, "Dude, all right, man." So I started drawing. I mean, it's something that I did it as such an aloof thing all these years of my life. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, it mattered. All of a sudden, what I draw mattered. Like, someone's gonna look at it and grade it. I've never had that happen to me, right?
Nice.
And so yeah, I just there was a bit of restriction in my head and freedom, where I'm just like, I'm writing an exam where it's drawing
Okay.
anything I want, but it's being graded, so I have to draw really correctly.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so I don't really remember what I drew and stuff like that. I just remember that it was this drawing that I did.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I got into the university, and again, that was another whole process. I was like, so is that it? That's all you need from me? You just wanted to see how I draw? And they were like, yeah, and you're in. I was like, this is awesome. This is the
Yeah.
best thing ever. Um, and yeah, so and then the university started off, and again, for the first like 3 months, I didn't know what I was doing at the university. We were just learning things: animation, fine art, film studies, and we just because you're given a kind of a broad picture of everything:
Yeah.
animation, film, everything, right?
What
So
was the course, Vinod? I mean, if you don't
it
mind
was
sharing.
it was
Was it
a
like a Bachelor of Fine Arts? Was it something
bachelor. I
like
think it was a bachelor of fine art or bachelor of science or something like that. It was
got it?
some bachelors of in animation,
Got it.
right?
Okay.
I would say I think it was a BFA. If I'm not wrong.
Okay.
But it was again. It was some time back, and I've that phase of my life. It feels so faded and far away right now. So I'm just like, yeah. It was some university. I think it was BFA. I think BFA in
Yeah.
animation and visual effects, something like that. It
Yeah, but
was
I think what's really commendable, Vinod, is at that point to make a decision to take up a professional course or like a degree in
right.
such a specific field. I don't think that's a very easy decision to make, because
No, I
a,
mean it
a
was
lot of your peers are probably, jumping into 4-year engineering, 4-year
yeah,
law
yeah,
programs, 4-year
yeah.
medicine programs, and then, unconsciously it does play on your mind, is this going to work out? What am I?
Right.
So, I'd love to know how you went about, discovering
So,
things about yourself in that program. And
well, actually, like, a little bit. This is almost like I have to say this. Even I mean, if I
sure,
don't say this, so when that whole cousin sister thing happened,
yeah,
that decision I made then was the easiest decision I've ever made in the past like 12 years.
okay,
That's saying that's what I want to do. Like, as soon as as soon as when you get this box of chocolate, you don't think the repercussions, right? You just like, I want it, you know.
yeah,
So that's what happened to me, because I was so deprived of what I need to study, because I didn't want to study what I was studying then.
yeah,
You know, I was looking at it and I was like, I don't want to study this. I have to study it. I don't want to study it. And then
mm,
you give me this animation. I was like, yep.
that's yours.
And what I was getting to was that what I have to say was I had zero, pushback from my parents.
Nice.
Both my mom and dad were just like, "Oh, cool, yeah, do it." You know,
That's
they were like, they were like, I think this is something that you might be meant to do, because
wow.
they've known that I've been doodling for so long. And I was like, dude, I was like, parents, check this out. I have found this animation course. And obviously, like, they spoke to my cousin and then found out more about it, because I had nothing to say, because I was just like, I don't know what's animation. And she told them more about it, and they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
Because they knew at this point, they knew that I was so uninterested
Everything
in
like
like
most
science or
other,
anything
yeah,
like that. Yeah,
yeah.
right. So immediately, and obviously I had a lot of pushback from my external family, like,
Mm.
from the other, from like, like aunts and uncles and people. And what made it so easy for me was that my parents, they said it, they said it like straight up. They were like, you're going to get pushback from people, are going to question this decision,
Okay.
but just know that you don't have to worry about them.
Oh,
you know
really?
yeah, you were they, up front, they were like, you don't have to worry about them. We're fine. We're going to support you through it. You
Wow.
don't have to listen to them. It's your decision. This is your life. So they will
Wow.
have a lot of things to say. So that thing was established back then, was that as long as my parents are happy, we're good to
Yeah,
go,
yeah, yeah,
right? And not once in these 11 years of doing this stuff, right, since my education, did they ever question my decision. Did they ever ask me, you know was this the right thing to do? They've
wow.
never. I don't like, it's actually crazy to me that they've never questioned it. But yeah. And so this is something, like I said, I had to say it. I have to
No,
give
that's
them props,
I
because
mean that's so important because that's so
yeah,
unlike the context a lot of us
yeah,
grow
it
up in
really is.
because there
Hmm.
is this like I think just having that validation because as a kid, I mean, you grow up in a household and your parents' approval does matter to you, but then just knowing that they're gonna back you up no matter what gives you the
Yeah,
freedom to explore fearlessly, right? And I feel
for
like
sure.
you were in that space at this point of time, so it's pretty
Yeah, I mean,
awesome.
because I went through a lot of hardship. I would say mental hardship in, like, in high school, where
Yeah,
I mean, I would get a lot of flack from my teachers for not focusing on my studies, and for not being like, some of the teachers didn't even want me in their class. They were like,
yeah,
this. I mean, I was deemed hopeless at one point. Even they were like, I don't know, like, he's not interested in doing it. So there's nothing you can do to a child to push their interest, right? You're just
yeah.
like, we're gonna. I mean, in hindsight, I should have. My mom should have been like, you should teach better, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah. No, but then
but
I think it's so unfair because it's like that little story, right? You know, you have a couple of animals and then you judge a bird by its ability to swim, right? But then it's
yeah,
also about understanding that at that age, kids
yeah.
are I mean, kids are going to be doing things. You're also going through puberty and so many other
Oh
things, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
are going to be uncertain about life, but to judge the child based on their academic ability is just one facet of their life, right? And I think it's unfair that we
Mm.
prefer kids that do well
Yeah,
academically and not the others because it creates this sense of why am I not good enough just because I don't do well at school. No, you're good enough, you're good in so many other ways. So I
I mean, it's so true, because, and I'm also going to give a little bit of a plug for this friends thing. So there is this organization that I recently started working with in India called Slam Out Loud.
mm,
I found them on a podcast that my another friend of mine also hosts this podcast sort of thing, and I found them on her podcast, and
okay,
I reached out to my friend saying that, could you connect me with these guys, because it was so interesting. So what they do is they teach students the importance of art in education.
wow,
Like, they will teach them the regular curriculum of things that you teach anyone that's about at like the age of 7 or 10 and above,
yeah,
right? But they would teach it in an artistic sense. They would teach
nice,
them visual arts, but
nice.
about science.
Oh, okay,
So art and education. And then when I got in touch with them, we had an extreme. I had an emotional conversation where, it coming to the point was, art was never. I was never allowed to take it seriously
yeah,
until I took animation as a course.
yeah,
But like, up until the end of my 12th grade, right? My drawing was seen as a distraction to my studies.
sure,
They were like, draw it when you don't have anything else to do. Like, no, they were like, paint something when you don't have much to do.
yeah, yeah,
So it was a thing that you were doing because you're on vacation.
yeah,
So this is going back to the time where you never it wasn't given a chance, which is why they're making, because I mean, I know it's so crazy to me, because I feel so alienated when I'm sitting with my colleagues or classmates or etc. and these guys were like, I've always wanted to be an animator. Like they were like, I wanted to be an animator when I was 4 years old, and I was like, I didn't even know this thing existed when I was 4 years old, you
Yeah.
know. So and then they were like, when did you want? They were like, have you been drawing all your life? And I was like, no.
I just
I was
picked it
like,
up. Yeah.
I draw like this now is because of sheer practice. I wasn't born like talented or whatnot, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's if I stop drawing for about a week, then it's actually a struggle for me to draw like the way you what you see, again, because it's something that is it's done out of, it's born out of practice.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I like that 10,000 hours we talked about
Yeah.
is like the beginning stages of my animation course when I took it up. I think it was about it was the first semester, probably at the end of the first semester is when it kind of struck me.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have this epiphany, or like you have this, that conversation you have with yourself that
Yeah.
led you to the path you're in today.
Mm.
Like you still remember that moment where that you get that spark in you and that snap. You're just like, this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. Like,
Yeah.
you better
Yeah.
be good at it. you know
Yeah.
like, I don't, why are you even doing it then if you don't want to be good at it, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So and so I recognized it on the fourth month, saying that I'm gonna have to put every ounce of my soul into this.
Mm.
Like, I'm gonna put in everything I have, right? I'm gonna, because I knew, looking at my classmates, I knew that I didn't have the drawing capability as they did.
Mm.
But the way it was achievable, but if I just don't stop drawing, you know
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep pencil on paper, and I drew like a maniac. I just drew, and it was crazy because I bought this big little drawing stand, and I just kept drawing. And
Okay.
especially we did this perspective studies, and I don't know what attracted me towards these perspective studies. Is drawing things in different perspectives, and understanding depth in drawings and stuff like that. I don't know what attracted me towards it, but I just couldn't stop doing it. I
Yeah.
had friends who were like, we had this dorm system, so we all used to stay in like like an area. So my roommates would leave to go out and do something with
Mm.
somewhere, right? And they'd be like, "You want to come?" I was like, "No, I want to do
Keep drawing.
this."
Yeah.
Yeah, and and it's so wild to me because I had never been that dedicated to something
Awesome.
ever. And
Yeah.
apart from cricket, right?
Yeah.
So I've never had that passion for something until then. And I loved that moment. I didn't care about anything else. I was like, I want to draw. And things,
Nice.
yeah, sure. Now when I look back, those drawings, were pretty, like, I was still learning, right? So they weren't. I was like, oh man, never gonna show this to anybody ever, So, but the idea was that I didn't stop drawing, and it was crazy to me. A year later, my friends, when it came down to perspective studies as a thing that you do to graduate, right?
Mm.
My friends were like, we should have drawn with you back then. I was like,
Really.
see, but wait, but that's not the point. Is that I didn't stop drawing, and I
Nice.
still haven't. That spark that happened in it was like 2011 or something like that,
Yeah.
hasn't stopped yet.
Interesting. And
It's 2021, and I still have the jitters to draw, on a daily basis.
like when you say drawing, Vinod, I mean, everyone's an artist in their own little way. And my family, my sister's actually a communication designer, and my dad ran
Wow.
like an advertising business. So
Oh yeah,
I
of
I
course.
feel like I'm slightly familiar with it. But then they
Right.
often say drawing has like seven basic elements. You have shape, you have
Mhm.
color, you have
Right.
texture, you have
Right.
tone, you have
Right.
value. So
Right.
I mean, how did you go about understanding these elements of drawing? And
I mean,
because
there
when
were
I because I'm looking at a lot of your visual drawings, your animations, even on your Instagram page. These characters are so well defined, but also there's this sense of depth. There's this sense of color and how you combine it to create a certain feeling, right? Because
right.
there are characters that communicate a certain emotion. So, you know, and maybe you can also talk to us now about your transition to the MFA program, because I actually looked up the curriculum of the MFA program, and what I noticed was there was a course in the SCAD program that had art criticism. You had a course on media
Yeah.
theory, and then you
Yeah.
also had like a final collaborative project that you
Right.
possibly could have worked on. So,
Right.
I'm curious about how your experience in this undergraduate program transitioned to what you did at the SCAD program, and maybe some, details about what it was like moving again, because you were in Bahrain and then Manipal and now the US, like
Well,
both of the.
so you're actually missing a big chunk of my life over there.
Sorry, go ahead. I mean,
There's
Vinod.
some maybe you might, I mean, you might not even know this because after Manipal, after I graduated, actually I didn't even I wasn't even there for the whole program.
Okay.
So about 2.5 years in, you kind of get you're exposed to. I mean, kind of. Let me quickly answer the question that you were
No,
asking
what
about
we
the
can do,
elements.
what we can do is go to that later. Maybe we
Yeah.
can just go through this particular phase. And I'm
Sure.
sorry I missed out on it.
No,
You
no, no, no,
probably know better
absolutely.
about your life. So yeah,
So, after Manipal or when I kind of I got to a stage in Manipal when I was like, I want to find things. I want to go work somewhere. Like, I
mm,
want to learn something on the field. As you say, right?
yeah,
When we say on the field, you sit in a computer and that's your field technically. So,
yeah,
yeah, but on site, you want to be in a production house. You want to be somewhere. And I didn't take the whole move into India too well, by the way. Going to India, yeah, I loved the sense of freedom for the first couple of months, right? I was like, wow, I'm not living with my family.
yeah,
This is my space. I can do whatever I want here.
yeah,
And but I really like Bahrain. I,
yeah,
I wanted to be there for a long. I would dip out after, like, the day my the finals had ended. On the day, I would book my ticket back to Bahrain and fly back for like 2.5 months, and
yeah,
then come back. And for the most part, I used to miss the first week of class,
sure.
and I would be in Bahrain. So I didn't take that move too well, but
Mm.
so when I came back one of these times, and after that 2.5 year period, I found out about this company called Talking Pictures in Bahrain,
Oh, okay.
and they were like the biggest media house in, like, I think in some GCC or some Middle East. I think they were a pretty big, um, um, I think, commercial film house in the Middle East, and I was like, well, if this is like the standard in the Middle East, this is where I want to be, right?
Got it.
And I think my dad had a friend who worked at that studio, and he emailed him, and I got introduction meeting with the producers,
Yeah.
and I mean, I had no experience at that point. I didn't know any softwares per se. I didn't even know how to use this tablet to draw digitally. I just knew how to draw something
Mm,
on paper, and I knew basics of storyboarding. I knew a little bit of Maya, which is like the 3D program we use, and um, I had like very bare bone knowledge about just like in general animation, right?
mm,
And so they were like, I mean, they were also awesome people, and I still, I value that moment so much because they were like, yeah, let's bring you in for a couple of weeks or a couple of
mm.
months, maybe. It was like those 2 months, and I did this internship. It wasn't paid or anything back then, but
Nice.
I was like, great. I just want to be here every day. I want to create this routine in my head that I want to go to work. That when you're a kid, that was like the first exposure to going to work, right? You're just like, wow, let's go. I got a job, So, and you go to this thing every morning, and obviously you get exposed to people making these commercials and filming, and you're an intern. You're like this 19-year-old kid that is just isn't capable of anything, but also is capable of a lot of things. Where
Was also very open to learning and
yeah, and you're
yeah.
they're just like, all right, let's go on set. You can hold this mic, you can hold this light. It was so mundane, but it was so cool because I was a part of every little thing. I was
Yeah.
for anything they needed. They would like, let's bring in young blood. He can carry stuff.
Yeah.
Let's bring it. So we actually call them runners right now. On a film set, they're called runners, where they're just asked. They carry stuff to and from the place and help out with the departments and stuff. So in hindsight, I was like, yeah, I was a runner, and it was great. But and then what happened was, and I'd gone back to Manipal, and
Mm,
I had mentioned to my professors that I was like, hey, I found this studio that I could possibly try and work at, or do an internship or something, or do like an official internship, right? And they
mm.
were like, great, you don't have to come back for the next semester. You can just do that. You can that uh, internship will count as your class, so you don't
Wow.
have to come. I mean, because the end product of you going to a college is to get a job somewhere, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like the the basic goal, get a
Yeah.
job after college. So, but then I had this internship, and and also Talking Pictures was willing to give me a stipend and all that stuff. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was small, but then it was great. It was something, right? And so I'd shown them the whole, a contract, as we call it, So they had written out this contract, and I'd shown this to them, and they wanted to do like a bi-monthly check-in. Like every 2 months, they were like, "What are you up to? What are you doing at Talking Pictures?" They don't want me to be hanging out. They want me to be working, doing
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I had learned like bits and pieces of After Effects and a little bit of, so we call this method called motion parallax, which back a few years ago was like the coolest title sequence technique you must have seen it in at least like about 10 to 15 movies. It
Mm.
was done so much back then that it was such a cool thing and niche thing to do with this. And also After Effects was coming up, and I got exposed to that sort of thing, that side of the industry where there are these After Effects wizards and stuff. So when I had come back after that internship, back to school for this last semester that I had, I was seen as this After Effects legend. They were like, "Dude, how'd you learn all this?" And I was like, "I went and worked here." And
Yeah.
well, the thing is, we didn't know much of it. I knew maybe like three more tools,
Yeah.
than the other guys. And I was like,
But
"Yeah,
it
this
was so
is."
cool because you I think what I'm getting, like, I feel like
I
you constantly had this drive to apply your knowledge in a real world context, right, Vinod? And I think this really benefited you, at least in this particular situation, because you took some of the knowledge you got in that academic environment and you
mm,
sort of converted it into a professional engagement, right? So
yeah. Well, the thing is, so you call it the curiosity bug, right?
yeah.
When you get bitten by this bug, it's this everlasting curiosity, and that's something that I can say that's been the driving force for me till date. Is that I became so curious because your world opens up. When you say that you're offering a kid animation program, and
Yeah.
you're saying that here, do this, and and also the animation program is just extremely vast. Like
Yeah.
there's so many little things that you can do, and there's so many things to learn about it. I'm still learning about it, right?
Yeah.
and and then the amount of information, it was like opening a can of worms where it just came at me, and I got curious about everything.
Nice.
I wanted to know, a little bit of everything. I was like, oh, what is this? What is this? And you go to an internship, and you're an intern, so you don't
Yeah.
really have a desk for yourself. You have like the spot for you to sit, but you don't
Yeah.
have like an assigned desk. So you're kind of floating around the whole studio, and I just walked around the entire studio, and I would go to different departments, and I had so many questions for each and one of them because each and one of them were doing something different, right?
Got it.
And I was like, this is wild. I mean, this is it was so much information that at one point I had to calm myself down. I'd be like, let's try and get this one question answered before you have this 3,000 questions.
Sure. Yeah.
So you kind of streamline your thoughts. This actually kind of brings me back a little bit to the question you had about
The
when I
elements.
when I was drawing elements, right?
Yeah.
So it's those little like you said, the color and perspective and shape and forms and all those things. When I said I spend 10,000 hours doing it. You spend 10,000 hours doing each of it. You
Got it.
do color for for 10,000 hours. You
Yeah.
paint different colors, and also colors all around you. You
Yeah.
can see color combinations all around you. If
Yeah.
you look at the sky one day at the sunset, you'd be like purple, blue, orange. Whoa, like and you start to see that these colors looks good with this color, and you try. I mean, obviously you will fail, right?
Yeah.
It will look shit for a few times, when you paint it, and you just have to have that patience. Patience is key. Like
Mm.
you have to have that. You patiently draw over and over again for 10,000 hours, paint something over and over again for 10,000 hours, and then eventually, yeah, I mean, well, if you keep doing something for that long, you're gonna get like kind of good at it, at least,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, for you to master it is obviously a different thing, where you
Sure.
get really deep into it and you learn everything about it.
Yeah.
But if you do something like the same thing over and over in 10,000, you're bound to get like kind of good at it, right? You're like,
Yeah.
okay, acceptable stage, and then it's really up to you when you expand it, and that's when the whole masters comes in,
Yeah.
because up until this point. So I mean, when I said the big chunk of life you were missing out was that between my undergrad and my grad school, I was
Yeah.
in Bahrain for 2 years. I
Oh
worked.
wow. Okay, so you
I
you
was
actually gained a lot of professional experience at
Yeah,
that
yes,
time.
I did. I
Nice.
did. So and Another thing that I'm actually missing, and I cannot believe I missed this, but during my undergrad, again, as this as this excited little child that I was, because they were like animation, I was like everything was awesome to me, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, a senior of mine who was still a good friend of mine,
Yeah.
she was like, "Hey, there's this conference called SIGGRAPH,"
Okay.
and she was like, "It's this animation conference, and you meet people from DreamWorks and Disney and stuff like that over there." And I was like, "Oh, cool, that sounds awesome." She was like, "It's in Singapore," and I was like, "I want to go to Singapore." That was more enticing to me than the conference, and
Yeah.
so and then I had an email address, but I never
Okay.
looked. I had no need to look at an email back then.
Yeah.
I was like, email existed, and I don't know why. For an account, maybe Facebook account, I needed an email, so I have an
Yeah.
email, right? Um, so I'd apply to this SIGGRAPH where you write essays and stuff like that. I didn't think too much into it. I just applied and I forgot about it. And one day, I don't even know what happened. I had to check my email for something, and I found this acceptance, from this program. They're like,
Wow.
"You've been selected as a student volunteer at this ACM SIGGRAPH conference in Singapore."
Yeah.
And here, and with housing, they're gonna house me, and they were
Oh,
like,
nice.
we'll give you accommodation.
Nice.
And then I remember I called my dad and I was like, "I don't know what this is really. It's something to do with animation, and I
Yeah.
want to go. That's where I want to go." I mean,
Wow.
and again, my parents, they were like, If it sounds important, go." you know.
Wow.
So they didn't question it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when they say question it, they asked a few questions about it. They were like, "What is it?" And I mean, I didn't know what it really either. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No, that's okay.
Um, I didn't know what it was really either. And we went off the website and we were like, "Okay, great. This is something to do with CGI, computer graphics, great." And that was the turning point of my life.
Mm.
Like me going there. So I went there just because it was Singapore, and we got to travel together. I got to go alone to this country. Like I had to take a. It was like a vacation sort of thing, right? In my
Yeah.
head, I was like, "I'm going to
Yeah.
Singapore."
Yeah.
Sure, I don't know what this SV thing is, but SV is student volunteers, but I'm going to go. And that started, and I loved everything about the conference because you live in a dormitory system where you stay with about 200 other students from all over the globe. Like
Really?
I mean, I met students from France and Germany and Australia, and these are people I've never, like, these are like countries that I've never like really interacted with people from, right?
Mm.
And it blew my mind. I was
Wow.
like, this is the greatest thing ever, right? I mean, there was this one moment over there. So anyway, SIGGRAPH became a vital part. I mean, you might have read somewhere down the line. I've said that SIGGRAPH is the reason I am like the person I am
Mm.
today is because of the conference. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, there are a lot of elements that can add to it, but that conference is the reason I am. The reason being is because at that conference, by the way, I should tell you this. Up until then, right? So I've been drawing at this point for like over and over again.
Yeah.
I've started to get good at it, right?
Yeah.
And it's gone to my head that
Yeah.
I'm a good artist. I'm like, yes, I got this, right?
Yeah.
So I go to this conference, and there's something called a portfolio review, and I see these guys getting reviewed. Their portfolios being reviewed,
Mm.
and I was like, that's cool. And I was so proud of my little booklet that I had that had these sketches on it. I was like, I'm gonna show this to this person
Yeah.
in front of 20 people. I don't know why I did that, but I did it, right?
Okay.
Like we were all just hanging out in this little porch side, and I was like, "Hey, Benny, here you go. Look at this
Yeah.
portfolio." And Benny, his name is Benny Garcia. I will quote him because he is. I mean, he's my. I don't know what to call him now, but he's like a really good friend of mine who's also my mentor. But he doesn't want me to think of him as a mentor. But he's a. It's weird, like we've
Yeah.
come a long way. So Benny started off. He ripped my portfolio to shreds.
Oh, he did. I was not expecting that. I thought
He
he'd give you.
ripped. He
Wow.
ripped it. I it was the worst critic. I've been critiqued so many times in my life. Every day I
Yeah.
get critiqued, right?
Yeah.
That one is my worst. I think maybe it's just that's the one that really
This
left a
is
scar.
this is so interesting the way you built it up. I thought that was gonna like lead, and then you just like killed it. So I'm like, okay, now where is this going?
He ripped it, man. He said you have to keep drawing. I was like, what more? I've been doing so much. And he absolutely mercilessly just. And I had like, so when he handed it back to me, I didn't want to hold my portfolio. you
Wow.
know, I was just holding it, and I had people walk up because again, I'm saying in front of 20 people. Remember I said that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these people they walked, they were like, "You needed to hear that." Like you
Oh, okay.
like because at this point I didn't know what constructive criticism was. I didn't know that
Sure.
saying you suck is a great thing. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so and my friends were like, they were like, you needed someone to say you suck.
Yeah.
You needed someone to say do better. And that started this little wild rage in me that every year from then on, I'm going to come back to SIGGRAPH Asia. I mean, not because of this one Benny, but for multiple reasons. But every year I came back to SIGGRAPH Asia, I showed my portfolio to Benny, and every year he shredded it.
He did. He
So
did. But
I would work on it like so this conference happened once a year, and every year, so 2011, 12, 13, every year Benny shredded my he was
oh,
like, he would just absolutely be like, do better. And then look, like, so he would show me examples. I mean, look, when I say, I'm making him sound a little crude, but yeah, sure, he was brutal,
yeah.
but at the same time, he showed me how to get better. He was like, do
But
these things.
just to give us like a background, was Benny like a
Oh yeah,
professional
yeah. So,
animator?
so so back then, Benny used to work for one of the top companies called Valve, and he was also one of the resident portfolio reviewers
Got it.
because so now I'm a portfolio reviewer at the same conference, right?
Got
And
it.
Benny and I work together now. Like we're colleagues, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
weird. Our like when people ask me and mine and Benny's relationship, it's quite wild because it started off as him absolutely shredding this kid's portfolio,
Yeah.
and then we ended up being colleagues and working together. Where actually I
Wow.
hired him on a project once. It was
Wow.
because he's also a professional writer. He's a great writer as well.
Got it.
So we were looking for writers. I was like, hey Benny, can I offer you a job? And he was like, this is wild. I was like, yup.
This is
So
that's such a fascinating journey, right? How
oh my
things
god,
come
it's
around
crazy.
and
Yeah, I mean, eventually, when I kept showing him a portfolio, I think it was about 2016 or at that point, he was like, "You know what you're doing. You can stop showing it to me." And I still haven't stopped showing it. Even till today, I show it to him every year at SIGGRAPH. I'm like, Benny, look at my portfolio. Even
wow.
if I haven't updated it, it's like my SIGGRAPH trip is incomplete if I don't talk to
Sure,
Benny
sure.
about my portfolio. I'll be
Got
like,
it.
look at my work. I
Got it.
mean, nowadays that conversation has become more like a discussion rather than like a portfolio review and a critique session.
Yeah.
We just chat about the possibilities of doing different things. It's
Yeah.
it's it's got. I mean, it's evolved a little bit, but yeah. So that's where. So and then that rage began, right? Where you want to impress this person, you want to get that validation, and I wasn't getting it for like 3 4 years. I would do so many things. I even had a job when I would go back and he said my portfolio was shit.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was something that you know it may sound like, oh my god, that sounds like a really crude thing to do to a person, but you have to understand that receiving an information is just as important as giving information to certain.
Sure.
So when you receive something, you have to receive it with a certain mindset.
Yep.
you know
Yep.
what when someone is absolutely destroying your portfolio, I mean, you think of solutions. You don't think of, I will never do this again. Be
Yeah.
like, how do I change that opinion? you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
um
Just to, like interrupt you slightly then in education, they have this thing called the zone of proximal development.
mhm,
And
mhm,
it's basically a stage where you're at a current level of skill set. It's this gray area here that's slightly above where you're at.
mhm,
And you're trying to move to that point so you can move to a higher stage in terms of your skill set. I feel like with Benny over there, he
mhm.
was someone that was probably at a much higher skill set, and he knew you could get there. So he
Mm,
was giving you information for this gap to,
right,
and maybe until then, a lot of your professors and peers and mentors were giving you information that kept you, like, sustained you
right,
at this stage, but they weren't pushing you, and you
right,
were getting comfortable in that zone. And I feel
right.
like that discomfort is actually, I think they call it eustress or something, where
I know what you're talking about.
it's positive stress on your skill set. And it's the same
Right.
with like health, right? When in
Mhm,
fitness we
mhm.
constantly apply pressure on a muscle to
Right.
ensure it
Expand. Yeah,
grows.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, so this brings me to a point that when when you take in certain information, there are a lot of choices in your head. You could receive it in multiple ways,
Yeah.
where you could react to it in a different way,
Yeah.
right? um now I've come to a position at my job or at my career level where I've interviewed people, right? I've been at the position of leading a team and stuff like that, where it's come a long way since then, right? So I have seen things from a different point of view when it comes to viewing an artist. Like, now when we're talking about Benny and how he saw this kid, and he saw potential or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
I saw it from a different angle when I was getting into these leadership positions, and I understood that when a company hires somebody, right?
Mm.
When a company hires, like even a company like Disney, anyone really, yeah, sure, your skill levels have to be at a certain level,
Yeah.
but what's more important is that you should have the right attitude to be trainable.
Mm.
That is more important than being a super skilled artist,
Got
you
it.
know because companies are looking to nurture you, right? Like, so
Yeah.
Sigraph did that with me, like, when I kept coming back to Benny, with like another portfolio every year. He was more impressed every year because that I didn't stop,
Yeah.
trying to do it. I didn't stop trying. I didn't stop learning, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, because you're 5 years later, someone will hopefully get it if you keep trying, right? So, and then so Sigraph started to invest in me, being like, join our committee because you have this story with SIGGRAPH. Like, I grew up with SIGGRAPH. Like, I'm a SIGGRAPH child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I started SIGGRAPH when I was 18 years old. I'm 29 now. So, it's been that many years and things. And there are a few people like Benny who's seen me on my day one at SIGGRAPH and today at SIGGRAPH.
Mm.
If people ask him, he has a story to tell about how he has seen Vinod grow from a
Nice.
child to a semi-adult now. you know,
Nice.
I say semi-adult because I don't. I was like, I'm not an adult, but yeah. So there's a journey. There's a story in someone's mind about my progression, right? So when I tell you that places or these companies, organizations look to get involved with individuals that are trainable,
Yeah.
right? It's because attitude is more important than your actual, like, there's a saying that in our industry, companies look to work with good artists with great attitudes rather than great artists with a decent attitude.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
interesting.
Like you can be a good artist, but if you have like a fantastic attitude, you're just like a friendly person, and you take in criticism well, you get involved in the production, you show passion, etc. Like that. This is I haven't spoken anything about being a good artist, right? It's just about the
Yeah.
way you approach the team and etc. Be communication, all that stuff you talk about.
Yeah.
That is more important than but because you could be the greatest artist, but then like a complete a-hole to work with,
Sure. Yeah.
so you're just like, oh my god, I mean, I don't want to talk to this person, I just want to send an email, and hopefully he or she would get it right.
Yeah.
But that's not
Yeah.
that's not the attitude. I mean, I've had that kind of, you work with that kind of people as well,
Sure. Yeah.
and that's not a situation that you want to be known for, because
That's
when
true.
you work with people like that, you're like, I don't want anyone else to think about me like this,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
learn from other people's, like, you observe, you learn.
And
And
also it's such a, I think it's such a collaborative endeavor, right? The projects you work on, there are hundreds and hundreds of people doing tiny bits,
thousands, right? I mean, it's
maybe even thousands. I mean, like some of the projects you worked on, I feel like, and also the impact of some of the things you do, right? So if you're not able to work in a team of creatives that are good in their own specific sort of areas, you're not going to be able to, deliver the output that the company needs. But then I think that's a very, very important insight, to have the right attitude and to be trainable, because a lot of us are not going to get into professional environments with exactly the right skill set that companies
yeah.
want, right?
I
So
mean,
we
you're
need
gonna
to.
you're gonna feel like you absolutely know nothing at jobs,
Mm,
where you start a job thinking that, yeah, I'm totally trained for this job, and I've been training all my life to get this one job, and you spend days where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I
yeah,
don't know if I deserve to be here, and those questions are absolutely fine to ask.
nice.
You don't have to shy away from asking, because you think that's negativity. That's
Yeah,
not negativity. That's more like, you're aware of things. You're aware that there's like a point you need to reach. You're
sure,
aware that you don't know everything.
sure.
So that awareness is important. When
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you when So when you get an information from your boss or supervisor or anything, and you absolutely have no idea what they're talking about, you're just like,
Okay.
I'm gonna Google how to do
Yeah.
this. You
But
know?
that's very humble, right, Vinod? The fact that I mean, you've spent so many years trying to do this, but you're still okay with, saying I don't know and I'll figure this out, but I don't know now. And that's not a bad thing to say, right?
I mean, yeah, you're human.
Yeah,
No humans. You have to understand that you have limitations.
sure.
You don't know everything. You cannot know everything.
Yeah,
Um, you have to learn, and you have to look up things. And sure, my attitude today, when I say these things, you know people should understand that it's not just like you snap into this attitude, you snap into these things. It's a
yeah.
work in progress.
Got it. Yeah.
I have made so many mistakes
Yeah.
to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So because you wouldn't know if it's the right thing if you've not done it and experimented, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like it's
Yeah.
like the very scientist thought, where you don't know if something works or doesn't work if you haven't performed a demonstration or an experiment saying that now I know it works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've made so many mistakes. I've been in conversations where I've been deemed as arrogant sometimes. You
Yeah.
know, so you're like, okay, that's not something that you don't. I don't think I'm an arrogant person.
Yeah.
So I change my way of talking or
Yeah. Yeah.
communicating. So you constantly evolve, right?
Uh,
So when
yeah.
let's say if someone who's an undergrad, listens to this conversation, is
Yeah.
like, oh my god, that's the attitude I want to have, right? No, no, no. Be patient.
Yeah,
You will.
yeah.
You,
But then,
you
don't you think you need to find a balance? Because sometimes I feel like when you let the feedback overwhelm you,
right.
you need to, because I know at that point of time you were slowly developing a vision of yourself as an artist, as a professional too, right? You know that you were taking in that feedback, but also bringing in a part of yourself that was uniquely you, right? And
Right.
and I think now you've spent so many years, so you know what feedback needs to be integrated into your larger vision and your practice. But somebody that's a lot younger, they can take that feedback and completely
Yeah.
demolish who
Absolutely.
they are. But then I feel like you need to find a balance. Like, you're taking feedback, but also knowing that
Right.
you're not bad. You're still
Right.
figuring things
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah. For sure. For sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in second chances,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah,
know, just because someone did something wrong once, you just hope that don't
yeah,
make the same mistake again. So
yeah, yeah.
you
And
know, and when you speak of younger artists, right? I mean, they should be given a chance to make a mistake. Like, it's
yeah,
weird. It's a weird sentence to say that. Give them a chance to make a mistake. You know, it's like if you're not going to give them a chance to even like go forward and make that mistake and then get better, right? Then I mean, you're being impatient with them.
sure.
Everyone has to have a little bit of patience with a
Yeah,
certain direction. And yeah, so I mean, you kind of deal with these situations over time,
yeah,
because one of the things, the only thing that I give advice to people, right, when I say that, when they were like, oh, I want these things that you've achieved and I want those things, and I was like, I'm not going to tell you, I don't even know how the answer to the question as to how I achieved them.
sure.
I The only thing I can tell you is to throw yourself at things and just be involved as much as possible and
Sure.
learn as
Yeah.
much as possible,
Yeah.
right? And then also acknowledge that you cannot get somewhere without support.
Yeah.
I could not have gotten here without my friends supporting me, my family
Right.
supporting
Yeah.
me. Um, it's something you have to recognize, that you're not just like this lone ranger in this path.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. But one thing I want to acknowledge here is that you've constantly, um, I mean, just looking at your journey, I didn't know about the years that you spent in your undergrad, working on this course, but also the 2 years in the middle where you were working in that company. But then your passion to go to SIGGRAPH every year and do
right.
those things. But before you started as a professional, you had 3 years of undergrad, 2 years of your master's. You had 2 years in that professional setting, but also several years of going to SIGGRAPH. So it's about 6 to 7 years of effort and constant practice developing your craft, right? So I mean, and so many things would have happened in that sort of journey. But I'm thinking about the last 2 years and making that decision to move to SCAD. And I'm really curious about your time there, because I'm
That's
sure
a
it was.
great question. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
I'm curious how, especially for younger designers or younger animators that are considering maybe pursuing something
right,
closer to home, going abroad. Like, what
right.
were the benefits of that program and taking your expertise to the level you want to take it to and where you are today, also the connections it opened you up to. So
Right,
maybe just
right.
start off with what SCAD was like for you.
Sure. That's a great question because it actually it may be a little bit of a long answer, but it started off when I was very comfortable working in Bahrain. I had no plans to I mean, yeah, you can't every single animator or anyone that goes into a design film art school wants to work in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
You want to be in Los Angeles, and you don't. I mean, you kind of to a certain extent you think Los Angeles and Hollywood is a fictitious place.
Yeah.
You're like, it's so far away. I mean, you're in Bahrain. It's so far away. You don't even think it's like what 11 hours away. So it's a crazy time zone as well.
Yeah.
So I remember I had come back home from work in Bahrain, and my dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What? I got a job." I'm chilling,
Yeah.
and and he was like, "What about the whole Hollywood dream?" I'm like, I mean, it's so far away. Like, I don't know how to go there. And then he was like, let's look into it, right? Let's see what happens. And then he was like, you don't have to go to LA first up. You could just go to America and then see what happens. And right. And again, this is also at a period where internet wasn't at its helm. And and because of SIGGRAPH, I had contacted my at this point. This is probably about 5 years into SIGGRAPH. I'd made like this diverse connections of friends and professionals in the industry and etc. So I hit up a few friends of mine. I was like, hey, I'm looking to do masters because at this point we're like, okay, I guess masters is a way to go to move to America. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really keen on educating myself with masters. I was like, I want to go to America and I want to
Mhm.
do it. So I've been blessed with amazing friends. I have to say, like I've been blessed with just wonderful friends everywhere. Like, with every phase of my life, I have like these good set of important people that are still in touch with, and they're all still in. We're supporting each other. We work together. It's fantastic. So I hit up this friend, and she was at SCAD. She was at SCAD then, and she was like, "You should come to SCAD. It's a
Mm.
great school, and with since you had some work experience, SCAD usually gave a certain amount of scholarship to
Oh,
just
okay.
people who had experience, and
Nice.
also had a pretty decent portfolio by then. So they were like, "Yeah, let's give you a good bit of scholarship." So I was like, "Yeah, the cheaper the better. Like, let's do it." So and when I went there, well, the North American education system is vastly different from the Asian education system,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like there's an electives, there's like you can choose your classes, you can take your classes as and when you like. It
Yeah.
was so flexible and malleable where you're just like, wow, so I get to really choose my path now. Like no
Yeah.
one's setting a path for me. You have these many options. I can take any of these classes.
Sure.
And then then I got into 2D animation where drawing animation became a thing, and I was like, yes, I want to do that. And
Mm.
that's when shows like Rick and Morty was starting off, and and stuff like that. So a lot of 2D came into the picture. And so when I took up SCAD, I quickly learned, and this is I'm not sure where I heard this, or I don't know how this popped up in my brain, but what I understood was bachelor's is where you learn how to do things,
Mm-hmm.
and master's is where you learn why you do things.
Mm.
So when you walk in, you're not learning a program, you're not learning a software or anything like that. You're learning why you do certain things. This comes to the point where you brought up early in the conversation where I had classes like art criticism, media theory, and those were such awesome classes to be in
Yeah.
because it was highly theoretical, right?
Mm.
You're doing a little bit of animation to do some presentation in a creative way.
Sure.
You're making a short film to explain a certain theory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then again, so this is why I got into theater. And that was also another point in my life where I got into books a lot. I got into reading.
Oh,
Until
really?
then, I wasn't. You know, that class, media theory, was when when they gave me like about 15 books to read, and it was a lot for me back then because I wasn't someone who read books. And just like 15 books, I'm like, Okay. And then I got so into reading because
But
on
these were books in a space that you already felt you had some information. I mean, it was building on
some
your
information,
yeah,
yes, it
yeah,
was, it was on a very deep level, and I discovered things that I never knew existed in the field of animation, right?
nice.
Which is what, it kind of humbles you when you learn things, because like I'm at a point where I could argue I know a decent bit about animation, right? But at the same time, I know there's things out there that I don't know about, and I'm curious to learn about it, because
Sure.
I was when I read these books, I read these extremely theoretical, extremely like metaphorical understandings of animation and certain theories that we've done. Like, why draw this character in a certain way? Like,
Yeah.
why does he have to have a square jaw and a circle jaw or a heart shape? Like, there's a theoretical understanding for why these characters have these specific traits.
Oh, okay.
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 So, and there's always emotions attached to it. There's
Yeah.
always this attitude attached to it. There's a perception attached to it.
Yeah.
Where if you see, like, let's say if you looked at Jafar as a character, right, from Aladdin, you
Yeah.
know he's evil off the bat. Like, you don't, when you look at him just posing with the little stick like that and the
Yeah.
goatee, he's not a good guy. Like,
Interesting. Yeah, that's actually true because when my first impression of Jafar was
right.
slightly evil, but then it's
Yeah,
also the impact of the surrounding environment around. Whenever Jafar
right.
popped up on the screen, there was always a noise behind him that was
Yeah.
slightly
So sound
scary.
is a very big element to it,
Yeah,
and I cannot talk about sound because that's
because
actually
it's a
my
different
my
department.
lack. That's why I love this industry. It's so collaborative, because when I work with sound, I don't know anything about it, so I'm just like, you guys do
So,
it,
yeah,
and if it sounds great, it sounds great, because I
yeah,
don't know, their working is a whole other thing that I can talk about, but let's not get into that stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But so Jafar, right now, if you were to put like Scar from Lion King, and by the way, Scar and Jafar was designed by the same person, Andreas
which
Deja.
is wow,
Yeah.
which is so
If now,
interesting
if
because
after
now,
if you go back and have Jafar and Scar open in your monitor, right, you'll see the similarities in the lean, thin. You've got these little tapering faces.
yeah, yeah,
So it was the same as Andreas Deja. He's a
wow,
legend.
wow,
So if you were to put Mufasa and Scar in like in a frame, anyone with a cerebral capability can be like, Mufasa is good, Scar is bad. You
interesting. Okay,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
they look pleasant. This color. There's also like there's a scar on his face.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and he's got this menacing look. He's always got this squint. He doesn't have a pleasant look in his eyes when his eyes are relaxed. He's always got the skin. He's got this pain in him. You can say. You can say
sure,
the irritation in an evil character saying that, why this is not working out for me.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that you kind of get into the emotional state. So there's a lot that goes into every little thing in filmmaking or animation films, where if you like, there are things, as I when I talk about it, right, I've had my mom be like, "Oh, I wish I know about this stuff when I'm watching it." I was like,
yeah,
"No, the point is you watch it from an audience perspective. You watch, because I have this curse now. I cannot watch a movie or anything without
yeah,
dissecting it subconsciously. Like, I'll be
yeah.
watching it and I'll just, like, I'll look at the shadow and I'll be like, "Oh, that shadow is a little, it looks different." And things, my mom's like, "What shadow?" I'm like, I'm like, "You see that?"
Yeah, it's
So
right there.
it's
But then for you it's so apparent because
yeah.
you
Well,
work on it
that's
and that's
yeah.
that's part of
Well,
your
not even things that you work on, even things that you watch
going to
as
see.
a,
Yeah,
because you understand how that frame was built. You
yeah,
understand how they made it. So your brain just automatically just puts it in different layers, and you're like, "Oh, I see all these little." We call them passes, like,
yeah,
where you put like the smoke pass and all that. I don't want to get into technicals, but
yeah,
so um, when you look at this image, right, there's so much that goes into it. There's so much thought that goes into every, like, I just talked about Scar, or a character's face, right?
yeah,
There's everything. There's like how wide are his shoulders, and etc etc. There's, anatomy is a very crucial thing. Like you were talking about, when you see my characters, they have a specific finesse, because that's because I've spent, again, 10,000 hours working on anatomy. Like, I know what muscles are called. Like, I've read a lot of biology books and
mm,
learned about how muscles work. Because when you animate something, you have to, like, yeah, you can exaggerate a little bit or a lot, but you have to still keep it within the parameters of how a body would work. You
sure,
cannot bend an elbow the other way. That's like, basics, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
you, and thing is, to do that you need to understand how this joint works. You
got
need to
it.
understand how those ligaments work in your knees, because that snap, and when you're walking, when you walk, when you step, so I wish like I had prepared a presentation or something. I
No,
want to
but
show you,
no,
because I want
but
to show you these frames and stuff. I'll show you that probably like like I'll just send you a document or like,
yeah,
check this out.
what I will do, Vinod, is all the links to your work. I will be including it in the show notes. So
Right.
if there's anything that you want me to link in
Oh
addition
no,
to
this is
the
not about my work. This is just
just the
general,
got it. Okay.
maybe I could recommend books for people to read.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
so, but anyway, so like, there's so much that goes into it, a little nitpicky about everything, right? And then when you put all these things together, because when you look at a frame, you're looking at like a forest, jungle, whatever, city, something. If you watch this movie Into the Spider Verse that came out 2 years ago,
Yep, yep.
so that one, every billboard was thought out.
Mm,
In like, if you do like it'll be the fastest camera movement. You will not even see that billboard, but that billboard was thought out.
interesting.
There's a story behind that bill. There was like, ah, yes, that's like the ramen place next to my house or something like that. It's like, it's very personal to whoever did it.
Mm.
So we yeah, all the time we add stuff. Like, I think my roommates are in a bunch of movies where I've designed them as characters who are just walking by in the background somewhere. So
Like,
it's like every little thing, and it's so wild. I mean, I'm sure you must have seen these making of videos of Pixar movies and
yeah,
Disney and the Easter eggs and stuff like that. Those Easter eggs are just pure fun, because you're just
yeah.
like, oh, let's put Vin Diesel in there, and because now he's trending now with this whole, I have a family and whatnot. So it's like he's become a meme.
Yeah. It
So like,
is.
when we, like
Sorry, no,
that.
no, go ahead, Vinod. Go ahead.
No, so there are times where you have to keep up with the trend, and you have to put these memes in movies because it's funny.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Um,
like Vinod, because I don't have like a background in animation, and there, if for people that don't really know what the industry is like, what is it what is the life cycle of a project like for you? For instance, what does an animator do on a daily basis? So you wake up, and what does your day look like? And this can
um,
also refer back to your, I mean, we can come back to your work at SCAD if you want to talk about that for a bit, but I'm really curious about, like, just for someone that's interested in it even as a mid-career transition thing, like,
right,
so
right.
what do you do on a daily basis?
That's interesting, because I haven't really, I don't think about what I do on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So, you just, that's your life. That's what you do, right? So,
Yeah,
but if I were to get it right, so to answer your first part of the question, and it really depends on the project, right? And if it's a feature
sure.
film, it takes about 4 years from start to finish, right?
Okay.
And then if it's a TV show, I've like sort of moved on to TV shows now, and I'm
Yeah,
primarily with TV shows,
yeah.
because I just like longer narratives. Episodic narratives are a lot of fun. So, in TV shows, it takes about a couple of years to because we work on the entire season together at the
Mm,
same time. And then we release it in chunks. Throughout, like, right now I'm working on the show, and that's going to be released in February next year.
mm,
So a lot of time, you have this thought where you're just like, you're thinking so far ahead. You're like, oh, this product is going to be done 3 years later. You're starting this now, but it's going to be done then. And the important thing, this is actually, oh my god, this is so funny. So I'm still into cricket, by the way.
you are.
I'm still fanatically into cricket. Like, I watch all the
Nice,
games, and
nice.
I follow IPL, and all. I watch any game and anything. I have all the subscriptions, Willow TV, and all that
Oh, you do.
jazz.
That's pretty cool.
So, MS Dhoni had once, in this interview, that he was like, focus on the process, not on the result, right?
Mm,
So that kind of quintessentially belongs to animation as well, is that you don't focus on the result as much. You don't think about how this last frame is going to look.
yeah,
Just do your current part right. So that's like the first part of your question, is like, that's the duration of a project, and it goes through multiple phases. And I don't want to get into that stuff, but
but would
there's
it
like,
would it would it be fair to say that as an animator, if you had to break down your work into a single line or a couple of lines, how would you, phrase that for someone that is new? So do you take ideas from your
right.
head and convert it into characters that are animated? Would that be a fair statement to make, or
That would be,
a very, very simplistic breakdown of
it's
it?
it's extreme. I don't think there's anything. It's too simple, I would say, in a
Yeah.
way. I'm just like, that's, I would say, an animator, like, what we do is, any idea can be turned into a story,
Got it.
you know. So that's how we look at it, because it's animation. We don't have to film anything. We
Yeah.
have to create things out of our heads, and so at this point, anything is possible.
Got it.
Any idea that you have, it could be the wildest and the ridiculous idea that you could have had. You're like, you can like jump off the balcony and you can just climb on the tree and just the tree would just then tilt down, and then you would get off the tree and keep walking on the street. It's crazy. You cannot film this stuff. Like you have to get CGI or something, and CGI is also, it's an animation, right? Which is why I stress on the fact that you can create anything, any
Yeah.
idea that you have. It can be turned into a story.
And
And
just
um,
jumping off that thought, like when you say any idea can become a story. Now, in a story, like the fundamental elements of a story are possibly characters, but also settings. But if I think about characters, characters
yeah,
have an emotional setup, right?
right,
So,
right,
and I'm looking at the projects that you worked on. I mean, these characters are not just popular in a North American setting, like Rick and Morty, popular all across the world.
right.
The Avengers Endgame, I think it was the highest grossing film
That
like
was
ever, right?
that was like the landmark in my career, because it was my first Marvel movie to work on.
Was it?
and
Okay.
and then I know the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe was coming to an end with Endgame. I mean, yeah, sure, they've been continuing on, but that era was coming to an end.
Yeah, yeah.
So I scrambled. I was like, I want to find out where
Who-
this, who's making this, and I want to work there. And
and no, no, but just to, I mean, I'd love to know more about your experience working on these projects. I mean, it's it's such a big deal to work. I mean, a lot of people be like, I saw Avengers and it was such a big deal, and it was
yeah,
part of our childhood growing up as well,
really
right?
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
for sure.
maybe if you could tell us about some of these professional projects, even the music videos for, you were part of the art department for Taylor
Yeah, for sure,
Swift.
for
And
sure.
so I'd love to know about these professional experiences. Again, I know they were housed in animation studios, when you were at Sony or
So
DreamWorks.
most of the live action stuff that I did, that doesn't fall into animation.
Oh, okay.
I did visual effects on those things.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
that's another set. That's mostly in um, production and pre-production, sorry, production and post-production,
Okay.
where because you're working with actual footage.
Sure.
Animation, you're creating the footage, right? You're making this.
So
Um,
what is the difference between animation and visual effects? Like if I
So
had to.
visual effects is what you see in visual effects is in live action movies, right? If there's an explosion, there was obviously no explosion in on set, because you cannot explode something on a film set. It'll
Okay.
you know calamity would happen. So you create these things as simulations. That this is where the science kicks in. The one I was talking to you about earlier,
Got
where
it.
where when we're like simulating this tsunami sequence,
Yeah.
like this wave is taking over the city, right?
Yeah.
It's all created using real life simulations where the values you put in, the velocity, the gravity, you know and then the viscosity of the water and how thick
Yeah.
the water is, the foam that's creating, all the scientific terms that goes into it. That's all pretty accurate, because we want it to look accurate, because these are meant to look, we cannot exaggerate at this point, because it's meant to be in a real life setting, in a
Sure. Yeah.
film, in a live action. So when it comes to VFX, and VFX is also not just explosions and simulations. There's VFX in every movie that you see, but you don't notice them because it's done that way.
Yeah.
When we were in VFX, there was a time, let's say this was a shot, it's a zoom call shot, right?
Yeah.
The director, all of a sudden, when he's after filming it, he was like, I don't want this jacket in the shot.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I don't want this there. And then, so this is the whole shot we're talking. We would have to crop this out, and we would
Got it.
repaint it. We would
Mm,
we would remove. That's VFX too,
got it.
right?
Okay.
So and we do a lot of sky replacement, because sometimes when you film something, the sky looks pretty bad. You want it to be a little more dramatic. You want there to be more clouds and stuff. So you take out the sky and you put another sky in there. you
Nice.
know and there'll be times where well, when there's an actor that's in a fight sequence, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much blood you can put makeup on.
Yeah.
There's more blood that we have to go and add.
Got it.
So
So all of that is the visual
all of that,
effects.
it's so, I
Got
mean,
it. Got it.
I would actually encourage everybody to just like go to YouTube and watch behind the scenes or breakdown, VFX breakdowns. Yeah, it's called
Nice.
VFX breakdown. You'll see
Nice.
how, you'll see what the little, you like, that was VFX, that was crazy. So
That's
you wouldn't
pretty
even
cool.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know that those things, like there was let me see if I can give you an example. um do you know, so the movie Annabelle, right? There's
Mm.
a so there was a scene where she's flipping these pages in a book and she's discovering about this demon and whatnot. And all of a sudden the director has a thought, is that I want another page being turned.
Oh, okay.
He was like, she's not turning enough pages, I want one more page to be turned. Now we have to go in and simulate this VFX, simulate this page turning like that.
Wow.
And then he was like, when we focus on the book that she's looking at, he wants a picture of a goat like being like shred to pieces because it's like
Wow.
there's some sacrifice or whatnot. I don't know, something with the story. And that's supposed to be placed over here. And then I wanted writing on. He could have totally done this on set and been like, yeah, let's write on this book and stick this picture now. So
I mean, you're
we just get this. We call it a plate where it's just a shot of. It's called the raw plate. Um, where what he filmed, he just give it. So we'll do all the color correction, and then we'll go and create all these. We'll go get a goat 3D model and then rip it. Like we have to do some gore stuff. Oh my god, yeah, the job gets a little weird at one point. Where I mean, there are a lot of explicit things I've done in the VFX world that I cannot talk about here. I'll probably
sure.
tell you about it after the recording is done.
Yeah.
But
No, but that's that. I mean, that's really insightful because it gives a young like person interested in the field an understanding of the
understand what they're getting
animation.
into, right? What they're getting
Sure,
into,
yeah,
right?
and that I wanted you to maybe tell us about those, like you graduate from SCAD 2017, right?
Right.
Maybe take us through some of the projects that really shaped your craft. Or, I feel like you say the Avengers was a big project for you, but before the Avengers, 2017, it's been like 4 or 5 years since then.
Yeah.
So, like maybe chronologically, you can tell us about one or
I
two
don't
projects.
I don't even know chronologically because it's so
Oh,
when
because
you
there
when you
there's
get into
so
this
many. I mean, I
there
did I went through your IMDb page and there are like
yeah
20 credits. So
yeah. And
like
thing is, that's not even all the stuff that I worked on, because that's the stuff that I like to talk about. Like
interesting.
you kind of if you speak to any animator, VFX artist, any artist for that matter, right?
Yeah,
They work like what you see is not what they only did, right? That's not
sure.
all they did. In a year you work on about 20 projects.
Oh,
You
okay.
talk about two projects
Okay.
because out of those 18 projects were just, it was something that, you're like, it's a shit movie, like, I don't want to talk about it, so it didn't get good reviews and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
and you have your own perceptions about that, but what you see on my IMDb is things that just, I would say proud of
sure.
I'm
Sure.
happy with it. But chronologically, let's see. So I started off with Nickelodeon in
Okay.
2017, I think. And so I worked on like I started on these shows, SpongeBob. Wait, because I told you I was, in SCAD, I got really into 2D. So
Yeah,
SpongeBob and those that was like in my realm of things. And
sure.
then being the VFX is a pretty dominant thing in LA, right? A lot of VFX is done here. So I had plenty of friends at VFX studios, and so many. Even now, all my one of my closest friends are all VFX artists.
Got it.
Um, so I knew of the studio that my friend worked at,
Okay.
and this is about the music video stuff. So they were working with music videos, and at that point, I had never considered music videos as something that an animator could do cool stuff. You always think of film, TV show. That's it. You don't think about music videos as a liable thing that you can create, right?
Yeah,
And you're like, why did you ever not think about this stuff? And also, music video as a culture,
yeah.
when they made really good music videos, started off maybe about 10 years ago with
Okay.
Gorillaz. If you have you watched Gorillaz
I
music
have.
video,
Yeah, yeah.
so that's like the standards, right? So I got into this company called Ingenuity Studios, where they were working on these. They would have Billie Eilish, Bruno Mars, Maroon Five, Camila Cabello. I don't really listen to her, but she's,
Yeah.
I guess, popular. Taylor Swift and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And so as an artist, one of the things that I would recommend to doing is that if you see something that you like to do,
Mm,
mold your ways to do it. Like mold. I mean, you can
sure.
adapt. Don't be like, oh, I'm sorry, I only do 2D. If you like to do something, learn it and do it. So I learned like these softwares to be able to to work on these music videos, because I was like, I
Nice.
want to work. And actually, I found out about Billie Eilish while working on a music video. I didn't know who
Oh,
she was. I didn't because this was in 2018, where she wasn't as popular as she is today. Like she
Yeah.
was just coming up, and and we would listen to the song like 1,000 times while working on the video, right? And we were
And
like,
she won the Emmys recently too,
she
right? For
won like
film.
some 3, 4 Grammys and
Yeah.
Emmys, and I don't even know. Like
Yeah.
she's done quite well for herself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at this point, nobody knew who she was, and she was
Yeah.
even at our studio. It's crazy. She was at my desk. She was sitting by my desk and
Are you for
telling me,
real?
"Yeah,
Wow.
it's." So, I mean, this was back when she was another teenager that was making it into the music industry.
Oh wow. Wow.
She was
That's
like, "Well, I think when we met her, she was 15, 16 or something. She was working with her
oh,
brother." So in those music videos, I didn't want to stop listening to the song. I was like,
yeah.
this song is really good. And
Yeah.
this is, and you don't even know that it's going to be such a big hit or anything like that. You just work on a music video because they want to release it. And then, and then Billie Eilish became a thing. And then it became like this unbelievable story when we were like, yeah, we worked on a music video. She's like, oh, sure you did. And then we were like, no, we really did. Look at this.
That's
Because and then we went on to work on multiple videos, and then same thing with Taylor Swift. Probably, I knew who Taylor Swift was when we were working
yeah.
on a video. So music videos is a pretty cool industry. I love it.
Awesome.
If you ask me, like, um, if there's a project you would want to do every year, what would it be? I would say a music video than
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
because it's such a beautiful experience. You don't have to think, strictly narrative basis, like the story has to be in the certain arc. Nah, you can just, like, I think there was a video for, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Maroon 5,
Yeah.
where they wanted something animated, where the whole studio was like, all right, that's your shot, that's your shot, that's your shot, animate whatever you want, and we're going to put it together.
Oh, that's
So it was like the creative freedom that you have, and it's really, you can, whatever you wanted to animate, if you've had this dream shot that you wanted to do, you can do it on a music video and be like, hey, can we put
uh,
this in the music video? Yeah, it looks cool. So um you know
good.
it's music video is such a malleable structure. It's when you want to work on something, it's
Yeah,
it's,
and
it's beautiful.
it's also a much shorter
And
project
also it's a lot of
compared.
fun because
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of music, right? I
Yeah.
love music drives my day. Like, I start off my day by putting on a playlist and just listening to it. And then if I'm animating something to a certain beat, that's
Yeah.
so much fun,
It
right?
is.
I would actually recommend everybody to watch this music video. It's a French song by this artist named Stromae,
I've
right?
heard him. Is he
Yeah,
the guy that made Allure on
Allures
dance?
on Dance, yeah.
Dance, yeah.
So he made this another. Well, it was this song called Carmen,
Mm.
and one of my favorite animation directors, his name is Sylvian Comet. He won an Oscars a few years ago, many years ago, but he made this animated music video for this song called Carmen. And you'll see there are, it's about the social media taking over humans and all that stuff. It's some weird thing, but the animation, like, the movement, when you see, they're all to the beat of the song. And I was like, that must have been so much fun to work on, because
Nice.
you're working on the song. And because when you listen to something, maybe if you want to move a little bit, you start to, like, bob in your head. Imagine that bob in your head, you're animating it to that beat. It's
Wow.
it's it's so
Wow.
much fun, right?
That must be something else, right? Because you're able to bring in your passion for music into,
Hmm.
your work with animation. But then, also what you said earlier about thinking about the biology of these characters. I feel like
Right.
animation, it's almost like you're a magician because you're thinking about the human, but so
Hmm.
many different elements that make the human human, right? Whether it's their physical appearance, but their emotional, what gets them going. So if this character
Right.
is listening to music, or like how do you're making a music video, but then what about the experience? So you told us about a music video, you told us about your experience with like 2D. Like, what was it like working on a film project, and what was it like
Mm.
working on a TV project, like maybe Avengers, or if another one seems
So
better.
yeah, so movies like, Avengers, or even, let's say, an animated movie. Like, let's compare both. It's all film, right? It's the same
Sure.
length.
Yeah.
Sure, things are, the process is different, but on Avengers, it's weird though, because so Marvel is extremely secretive about their production. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
so even the artist working on it, when I was working on my shot, I didn't know what the context of the shot was. I didn't know
Mm.
what was before and after.
Sure.
I was given, actually, I did know what was before and after, but I didn't know when this showed up in the movie. Like, if I told someone while working on it that I'm working on a shot, that this is what's happening, obviously that would be a breach of my contract. And
Sure.
but let's just say, hypothetically, I say that this is a scene that I just animated. There's not a high chance that the person would figure out what the story is about, or if I gave a spoiler even, because it's structured in a way that I mean, obviously there's, but like I said, there are thousands of people that work in this. I mean, when I talk about thousands, I'm talking about thousands just in post production,
Yeah,
just in the VFX.
yeah.
There's thousands because it's done, globally. There's about like maybe 20 studios. Have you ever sat on during credits on in a movie?
I have, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a big film buff, and
yeah,
one of my pet peeves is sitting down and finishing the credits to make sure
right. Yeah, it's
But
so
then
it
the
we
Avengers one was pretty long. I remember that.
yeah. So we do that religiously. By the way, we
Yeah,
always sit through credits because you've kind of built a network at this stage where you possibly know at least one person that worked on that movie. Like
yeah,
any movie you watch, you're like, I probably know at least one person in there in
yeah,
the credits. So just to like honor, support friends, we
yeah,
sit through the credits and just be like, nah, we're not like these people have worked their asses off to be
yeah,
on that list. So and we know, I mean, we're firsthand experience to know how it is to be on in that position, right? So
yeah,
you want to show respect, so we do that. Thank you for sitting doing credits. I like that pet peeve of yours. Great.
yeah.
so so if you sit through a credit, you'll see but like 15 different studios that worked on it.
Mm.
So with Endgame, so I worked on the shot when Thanos, gets into this on his planet, and he comes, he fights. That's when they lose. That's when Doctor Strange gives this Infinity Stone to him and the Time Stone. So that was a sequence that we worked on, and I had no clue what the con. I was like, it's a fight sequence, great. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, I was just. I mean, look again, like sure, I talk about how it doesn't affect me what I'm working on, and I'm working on it professionally. But you're a fanboy at the end of the day. Like
yeah.
I'm just like I have this 3D sequence in my computer that's open, has Iron Man and Spider Man in it. I'm like I'm
Oh,
sold. Yes, yes. Well, I mean,
awesome.
at that point, you just kind of pinch yourself and you're like, I cannot believe that this is happening. And then yeah, when you work on it, you obviously you kind of snap out of it every now and then. You're like, okay, let me get this shot done and then watch this.
Yeah.
So my role on that was color artist. So I was doing the color sequences and how it looks. So in
Uh,
all that little red planet, and it was purple at one point and it became
yeah.
red. So it goes through a lot of phases, right?
Yeah.
A lot of my job, the word I would say I would use is iterations.
Mm.
So iterations of my work is I have to make the same version over and over again. So let's say if I was given a shot of this room, let's say this is a bedroom sequence, I have to make iterations of different looks and styles, and this is how so I make about 15 of them, and then we go to the art director or the director, and the director picks about five of them, and then I'll
Uh,
take those five and I'll see what they liked in those 5 to 15 things, and I'll make another five, and then they'll be like, and
uh,
then we'll bring it down to three, two, and one, and then that'll be the final shot, right?
got it.
So there's a lot of iteration that's my role. My role is to do that stuff, which is fun because you get to work directly with directors and actors because you know you you have to kind of manage their costs. And you're like, hey, can we get like a little bit like no? I think it was Thanos's. There was the artistic decision of removing Thanos's his armor
Cost.
was
Yeah.
was because of the reflectivity on his armor. We were like, we don't
Oh,
want that much reflection when he's going to be fighting in these planets. So let him take it off. Let him be relaxed when he fights with. He has a gauntlet. What more does he need?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so because you saw in the first shot of the movie, like he's got this golden armor, right, and he
yep.
takes it off. That's because we knew that it was when you kind of move on, you see that it's reflective. It's going to be
Uh,
shiny things,
I,
and
I would never have thought about that. I just thought it was like you just did it because it was part of the scene, But then
no,
I'm sure
like
that
I said, right, this is coming back to the fact that everything is thought out.
thought out. Yeah.
Like
That,
things that are ridiculous are thought out. Like why
that's
you see like how many pigeons are flying across the screen. Like there's a count for this. They'd
yeah.
be like, is there 24 or 26
Because
pigeons?
you
It's
have to you have to create those things, right? You can't just put
well,
them. I mean, everything has to be there. There's a purpose behind it in
there's
that.
a purpose behind everything, but you
Sure.
do like in terms of count, you don't have to create each one of them. You
You
just
just
say
create.
in 26,
Yeah, yeah,
and
that
then
makes sense.
you randomize it. There's like a lot of technical aspect that goes into
And
simulating birds flying.
yeah,
Um,
and that I mean, I feel like we can go on for
like
2 hours about the technical part about your
absolutely.
profession. Then I feel like that is something that would be so interesting. I hope you do this with someone that really understands the craft, and just to understand how you go about designing each of these projects would be just a fascinating discussion in itself.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, well,
to
I do webinars. So I've done webinars where I've just shown like a process of how to build a shot and stuff like
Awesome. I
that.
mean, if I could link that in the show
I don't know
notes,
where I need to find it. I'll send
no,
it to
but
you.
if you ever do plan to do it,
Yeah,
I highly recommend. Like one of the things we try and do in our in the show, is like if there's anyone that wants to reach out to you for a professional
right.
collaboration, I will, hopefully they listen to this and they're able to reach out to you. I mean, Vinod's on Instagram. I will be linking Vinod's Instagram account and his LinkedIn account in the show notes. So I highly recommend following this interview up with just checking out Vinod's work and taking it forward, because a discussion can do only so much, and it's really hard to look at a person's life in a 1 hour or 20-minute conversation. But then, just to end this, I want to be respectful of time and your other engagements. But like, if you had to tell me about some of your favorite animated films and what you liked about them, you could mention one or two. Or if you don't want to talk about a project you worked on, maybe a particular animator that whose work you are really inspired by, and maybe like a last piece of advice for an aspiring animator, that would be like a good positive note to maybe
Wow.
end this interview.
So I'm not going to talk about my favorite project
Sure.
I've worked
Yeah.
on because
Sure.
I don't. I don't really know what the answer to that
That's
question
okay.
is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I mean,
every project has there's a good bit of PTSD involved and there's a good bit of happiness involved because you're just like that was stressful to. I'm not thinking about that.
yeah, that's
But
perfectly fine.
no, I mean I'm working on a project right now which is called it's a revival of a show that was really popular in 2001 to 5 was it's called The Proud Family.
Mm,
It's a cartoon TV show. You can look it up. Um, and that's a really I mean I didn't know about the show until I got put on the team right now. So and that's I'm really excited about that one. So that's I guess is my favorite show that I'm currently working on. So but then my favorite movie that I've watched, things
yeah.
that has left an impact in my life, right? So Jungle Book was something that I watched I think over 1,000 times. It was something I
Wow.
connected with as a kid as well. It was just a beautiful little story to tell. I mean, I've watched like the live action version. I've watched like there's an alternative live action version that's directed by Andy Serkis, and so I've seen every little iteration. That's a movie that impacted me. I don't know what about it impacted me. I cannot pinpoint saying that the
Yeah.
story was. It was just everything. I mean, again, right? It's in that Jungle Book. If you look at Shere Khan, if you look at the way he's designed,
Yeah.
he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
So it's always like that, and then so that was a good. And actually, there's another movie that I don't know if people would know about it. It's directed by Tim Burton. It's called Nine, just the
Mm,
number nine, and it didn't do too well because there was death in that animated movie. You know, it didn't. They didn't want to be like, oh, there's death. It should be happy endings and stuff like that.
yeah.
It's a little bit. It's a dark movie, but it's one of my favorite movies. And even like the VFX, the animation, the style, the art direction was so impactful. I mean, You might if you've seen my work, you would when you go back and watch that movie, you'll see the influence that it had on my work, even
Interesting.
till today. And so those are like some.
Was Bluebird somehow influenced by that? Was it Bluebird, the project you worked on?
Uh,
The
Bluebird was Bluebird was a project that we created. Me and another
a
friend
couple of
directed it.
others.
Yeah, so we just made it for fun and it won
Got it.
awards and we were like, oh well, great.
That's
It,
nice.
it was a VR. It was a VR movie. We did it for absolute fun of it, and yeah, I mean it ended up doing well, and we still don't understand why it resonated with people. We were like, I mean, apparently it did.
Is it
So
is it on YouTube though? Can we
no,
like
it's so it's still doing like that's the thing. It's
is
still
the
doing film circuits. Like, it's
got
still
it,
on
got
film
it.
festivals and doing its thing. So
Sure.
I think we're about a year away from releasing it to the
Sure.
public.
Yeah, yeah. So, but those two recommendations are great. I will
Yeah.
include trailers to both those movies there. But
They
then
should, I think they're both available on YouTube at this point.
they are
They're both
awesome.
quite yeah.
Awesome. But then, like just to conclude this, Vinod, like if there was a young person in your situation in school that's
Right,
slightly interested in animation, like
right.
what is one thing that you would, maybe want to share with them to keep them going through this journey?
Oh yeah. You gotta be patient. You have to let things come to you, and yeah, there's a good bit of aggression involved. Like you have to be tenacious. Um, you have to go and get your answers, go and get things. But again, patience, and there's a good little gray area between the two. Can I have a balance between the two? But also know what you're getting into, right? That's the key. It's animation. The way I got into it, because I was aloof. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, because I did things a lot more in a slower progress because I didn't know what I was getting into. But if I had done my research and development at that point, I would have sort of fast tracked a little bit. But I mean, no regrets really. But that's something that I would ask, if you're in like 12th grade or something, and you're like, I want to do animation and kind of want to do animation. Look into it. See what
Mm.
see what it takes. Talk to people. Like, get involved with the community. Because artists are one of these people that are supportive of one another, because they all know the struggle.
Okay.
We're all in the same boat, right?
Mm.
So everyone will be willing to help you. No one's going to be like, I have the secret knowledge that you don't have. Now I'm going to give it to you. So yeah, get involved with the community. But yeah, do your research. Like, look into what you're doing, and the key, one of the things that I will say is to keep at it. I know it sounds so cliche, right?
Yeah.
Everyone tells you to keep at it, just don't stop, but really don't.
Yeah.
You will have like maybe 4 out of 7 days a week where you don't do a good job, and 3 days is when you do a good job. But keep at it.
Sure.
Those 4 days will reduce to 3 and 2 and 1. Yeah, and so but if you have to keep at it. That's the key. There'll be 1,000 reasons to stop, but
Yeah.
just take a breather. Don't do it for maybe a day. Go take a walk, go to the beach, and then come back and do it again.
No, but I think this was just such a, I mean, I've known you in so many different capacities, then cricket
Right.
was like a common interest, but it was just
Right.
nice to catch up again and get to know this side of your life, and how passionate and wonderfully dedicated you are. So thank you so much for your time, and for being so inspiring with your work overall. But I hope to maybe, see some of your projects in the big screen in the
My
coming
own
years.
projects, sure.
But
uh,
even projects you're going to be working on. I mean, I've been a fan of like Rick and Morty and Avengers,
right.
so I think thank you for your work on that. But
Yeah.
again,
Uh,
um, on that note, we come to the end of this episode of Learning Stories. Stay tuned for more such wonderful profiles of people trying to change the world in their own little capacity and through their own little way. But thank you again, and thank you, Vinod. Until next time, stay tuned for another profile.